When I glanced at my husband's computer screen that night, I felt an immediate shock course through my body. It wasn't the usual stream of videos or work files he might have been looking at. No, this was different. The screen was filled with videos of wives in compromising situations, and I froze in disbelief. "Good afternoon, my friends," the woman on the screen began. She was the host of a popular channel called Secrets Infidels. With a bright smile, she continued, "Get ready, because what I'm about to share today is going to resonate with many of you, especially women. I have no doubt that a lot of you will see yourselves in this story. Maybe more than you like." The screen flickered and a woman named Lucy started to speak. "My name is Lucy," she said. "I'm a lawyer living here in Chicago with my husband Colin. I'm 38. He's 44. Unfortunately, we don't have any children, as I had surgery to remove my uterus when I was younger due to health issues. We've been married for 22 years. That's a long time, and it shows that our relationship has stood the test of time." I felt my breath catch in my throat as I listened. This woman's story, while not identical to mine, felt eerily close. She went on to talk about how Colin was the first and only man in her life. They had their own home, good health, and financial stability. She admitted that, while her husband had always been methodical and stubborn, they had built a harmonious life together. But then, things began to shift. Over time, the routine of daily life, their closeness, and the very fabric of their intimacy began to unravel. She acknowledged it wasn't just him. She too had withdrawn, no longer seeking him out the way she used to. But despite the cooling of their physical relationship, the love and respect they had for one another still formed the pillars of their marriage. She described the night everything changed. It was early in the morning when Lucy woke up to go to the bathroom. After returning to bed, she noticed that Colin wasn't beside her. At first, she thought maybe he had gone downstairs for a snack or a glass of water, as he often did in the middle of the night. But as the minutes ticked by, unease settled in. Where was he? Why hadn't he returned? A glance at her phone revealed that it was already past 4 in the morning. Concern gnawed at her, and she decided to get up and investigate. She walked through the silent house, the oppressive darkness heightening her anxiety. She checked the kitchen, the living room, but Colin was nowhere to be found. Finally, as a last resort, Lucy went to the small office Colin had taken over, where he often spent hours playing games or watching strange TV series. She carefully opened the door, trying not to make a sound, and there he was, sitting in front of his computer, his face illuminated by the dim light of the screen. At first, it seemed like the usual seeing Colin, lost in his own world. But then something felt off. Lucy walked closer, and what she saw on the screen made her heart drop. Her husband was browsing adult websites. The explicit images filled the screen, leaving no doubt about what he was doing. "My heart was pounding," Lucy said, her voice cracking. It wasn't just the shock of what he was watching, but how deeply absorbed he was in it. This wasn't the man I thought I knew. The distance between us suddenly made sense. The coldness, the way he had been ignoring me in bed. It all clicked. Lucy didn't confront him right then. Instead, she quietly slipped back to bed, her mind swirling with confusion, anger, and sadness. Sleep was impossible. She lay there, wide awake, her thoughts racing, unable to shake the image of her husband glued to those websites. What was happening to her marriage? Why was he doing this? And more importantly, how long had this been going on? Hours passed, and as the sun began to rise, Colin finally returned to bed, slipping in beside her as if nothing had happened. Lucy pretended to be asleep, silently watching him as he drifted off without a care in the world. The night had been endless for her, filled with turmoil. But for him, it was as though nothing had changed. The next morning, Lucy didn't know how to broach the subject. The weight of what she had witnessed made it hard to talk. How do you start that conversation? Instead of confronting Colin, she reached out to her best friend Abigail, hoping for some advice. Abigail, who had been married 5 times, seemed like the perfect person to talk to. If anyone could offer insight, it would be her. Lucy poured her heart out in a long message, recounting everything she had seen and felt. Within minutes, Abigail called, her voice full of concern. She insisted they meet at a nearby cafe to discuss everything in person. When Lucy arrived, Abigail greeted her with a hug, her eyes wide with worrying. Without hesitation, she launched into a string of questions. "What happened? Did he cheat on you?" "Oh, Lucy, I swear, if he did anything to hurt you. Lucy quickly explained what she had found, making it clear that there hadn't been any physical cheating, at least, not that she knew of. But what she had witnessed still felt like a deep betrayal. She couldn't help but wonder if it was just the beginning of something worse. Was this addiction to adult websites going to tear their marriage apart? Could it be the reason Colin had become so distant? Abigail sat back, absorbing everything. Honey, you've got to talk to him. You can't let this fester. If you don't address it, it'll eat you alive. Lucy nodded, knowing her friend was right. But how? How do you confront the man you've spent over 2 decades with about something that feels like a betrayal without causing even more damage? As she sipped her coffee, Lucy knew that the road ahead was going to be anything but easy. That night, after Colin's confession, I lay awake, my mind racing with all the new revelations. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. After over 2 decades of marriage, we were now stepping into completely uncharted territory. The idea that my husband had been harboring these desires for so long without ever bringing them up left me both stunned and curious. How had we gotten to this point, and what did this mean for us moving forward? As I tossed and turned, I kept replaying our conversation in my mind. Colin's relief was evident, but I couldn't help feeling a mix of emotions: confusion, fear, and even a strange sense of excitement. Could this really be an opportunity for us to rekindle the passion that had faded over the years? I wasn't sure how to feel about the idea of involving other people in our relationship, but part of me wanted to explore it, if only to see if it could truly help bring us closer again. Over the next few days, Colin and I talked more openly than we had in years. We discussed everything: his fantasies, my feelings, and what this would mean for us as a couple. At first, the conversations were a bit awkward, but with each discussion we became more comfortable. We made a pact: whatever happened, we would face it together with complete honesty and trust. I could see that Colin was grateful for my willingness to listen and consider his desires without judgment. He confessed that he had been terrified of losing me if he ever brought up these fantasies, which was why he had kept them hidden for so long. He hadn't wanted to hurt me, or make me feel like I wasn't enough for him. Hearing that softened my heart, and I realized just how much he had been struggling with this internal conflict. One evening, as we sat together on the couch after dinner, I brought up the idea that Abigail had suggested: exploring his fantasy in a safe and consensual way. Colin looked at me with wide eyes, clearly surprised that I was the one initiating the conversation. I explained that while the idea of sharing such an experience was foreign to me, I was open to trying it if it meant we could reconnect and strengthen our bond. I wanted us to do it together, not just for him, but for both of us to reignite the passion and intimacy we had lost over the years. Colin smiled, clearly relieved that I was willing to meet him halfway. We agreed that we wouldn't rush into anything. This was new territory for both of us, and we needed to take our time to make sure we were both comfortable with whatever decisions we made. Over the next few weeks, we began to explore options together, discussing what boundaries we wanted to set and what kinds of experiences we might be open to trying. We spent hours talking, sharing our thoughts and feelings more openly than we ever had before. It was as if a new door had opened in our relationship, allowing us to rediscover each other in ways we hadn't imagined. At one point, we even started looking online for communities of couples who had similar fantasies, reading forums, and watching videos that gave us insight into how other people navigated this kind of lifestyle. It was fascinating, but also a bit intimidating. I wanted to make sure that whatever we did, it would bring us closer, not drive us apart. We talked about potentially finding another couple, or even a single man who might be interested in joining us for our first experience. I had never imagined myself in such a scenario before. But the more we discussed it, the more I began to see it as an adventure, a way to step out of our comfort zone and explore something entirely new together. However, we were both very careful. We didn't want to jump into anything too quickly or make decisions we might regret later. Trust was at the core of everything we did, and we both knew that if at any point either of us felt uncomfortable, we could stop. This was about mutual respect and honesty, not just fulfilling a fantasy. As we continued to plan and explore this new chapter of our lives, I felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in years, I wasn't worried about our marriage falling apart or about Colin drifting away from me. Instead, I felt empowered, like we were taking control of our relationship in a way we never had before. Eventually, the day came when we decided to take the next step. After weeks of careful consideration, we found a couple online who seemed like the perfect fit. They were experienced in this kind of lifestyle and understood the importance of communication, boundaries, and respect. We chatted with them for a while, getting to know them before deciding to meet in person. The day of our meeting, I was a bundle of nerves. Colin could see it, and he reassured me with a gentle touch on my arm, reminding me that we were in this together. I knew that whatever happened, this experience would bring us closer, and I was ready to embrace the unknown with an open heart. The night of our first encounter was both exhilarating and terrifying. As I stepped into this new experience with Colin by my side, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. The night unfolded in a way I had never expected, full of passion, connection, and, surprisingly, joy. It wasn't just about the physical experience. It was about rediscovering each other in a completely new way, seeing sides of ourselves that had been buried under years of routine and unspoken desires. Afterward, Colin and I talked for hours, processing everything together. It felt like we had unlocked a new level of intimacy in our relationship, one built on trust, honesty, and a willingness to explore together. I realized that this wasn't just about fulfilling a fantasy. It was about breaking down walls that had been holding us back for so long. Now, as we continue to navigate this new chapter of our marriage, I feel more connected to Colin than I have in years. We're still exploring, still learning, but we're doing it together, hand in hand. Our journey is far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful that we can continue to grow, to love, and to explore new depths of our relationship in ways I never imagined possible. As promised, I'll keep you updated on our journey. Who knows where this path will lead us, but I'm excited to find out, and I'm grateful to be doing it with the man I've loved for over 2 decades. If this story resonated with you, or if you have any thoughts or questions, leave them in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, so you won't miss the next chapter of our story. Until next time, take care, and remember, every relationship is a journey, and sometimes the most unexpected detours lead to the most incredible destinations. In the days following our first experience with the other couple, Colin and I found ourselves in a completely different space emotionally. The air between us felt lighter, like the tension that had been quietly building for years had finally broken, allowing us to breathe more easily. But it wasn't just relief that I felt, there was also a renewed sense of excitement about what our future held. For the first time in a long while, we weren't just going through the motions of married life. We were genuinely communicating, not just about practical matters like bills, work, or kids, but about our deepest feelings, desires, and fears. Colin opened up to me in ways I never thought he could. He told me about the years he spent struggling with his fantasies, wrestling with guilt and fear, wondering if he was broken or abnormal for having them. I, in turn, shared my own insecurities, the worries I had about whether I was still attractive to him, the fear that maybe our marriage had become too routine, too safe. These conversations were raw and vulnerable, but they were also transformative. I realized how much I had been holding back over the years. There were parts of myself I had hidden away, afraid to fully express my own needs and desires, for fear of being judged or rejected. Now, with the walls between us crumbling, I felt empowered to explore not just Colin's fantasies, but my own. It wasn't easy at first, even though we had taken that first step together. There were moments of doubt. I wondered if we were moving too quickly, if this path would eventually lead to heartache. What if, despite all the new intimacy we had found, one of us became jealous or insecure? What if these experiences, instead of bringing us closer, ended up pushing us apart? Colin reassured me every time these thoughts surfaced. He was attentive and patient, constantly checking in to make sure I was comfortable with the pace we were going at. We decided to set clear boundaries to protect our relationship, rules that both of us agreed to follow. One of the most important rules was that we would always talk about everything openly, no matter how difficult or awkward the conversation might be. Transparency became the cornerstone of our new dynamic. As we continued to explore, something unexpected happened. I began to enjoy it. What started as a way to fulfill Colin's desires turned into a journey of self-discovery for me as well. I found that the experiences we shared were not just about the physical aspect, but also about emotional freedom and opportunity to break free from societal norms and expectations that had always dictated how a marriage should look. The fantasy wasn't just Colin's anymore, it had become ours. And with each new experience, I felt a deeper connection to my husband, a connection built not on tradition, but on the shared adventure of exploring the unknown together. One evening, after yet another heartfelt conversation about our evolving relationship, Colin asked me if I had any fantasies of my own that I had never shared. For the first time in years, I felt safe enough to open up completely. I told him about my own desires, things I had buried deep down because I thought they were too taboo or unconventional to bring up. To my surprise, Colin embraced them without hesitation. This mutual exploration of each other's fantasies wasn't just about sexual experiences. It was about rediscovering who we were as individuals and as a couple. It was about peeling back the layers of ourselves that had accumulated over decades of life's routine and responsibilities, and reconnecting with the passionate, adventurous people we had once been. I didn't expect this journey to change me so profoundly, but it has. I feel more alive, more connected to Colin, and more open to the possibilities life has to offer. Our marriage is no longer something I take for granted. It's something I actively nurture and invest in every single day. Of course, it's still early in this journey, and I know there will be challenges ahead. But for now, I'm embracing the unknown with a full heart. Colin and I are no longer just husband and wife. Living side by side, we're partners in every sense of the word, exploring life, love, and desire together. And that, I've come to realize, is the most exciting part of all.